Good afternoon, arts advocates, and welcome to Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund's ArtsVote Make Your Plan, the Path to the Polls webinar. My name is Morgan Fernari, Arts Action Fund Manager. I'm a 29-year-old white woman with freckles and dark shoulder-length hair. I'm wearing a red blouse and sitting with some artwork behind me in my home in Miami, Florida. Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund are committed to accessibility, and this includes our speakers offering visual descriptions of themselves, which makes the webinar more accessible for audience members that are blind or have low vision. Additionally, there are Zoom-generated closed captions for audience members. You can access the closed captions by selecting the CC button in your Zoom toolbar. This webinar also includes live American Sign Language interpretation, which you can access by clicking on the globe icon in the Zoom toolbar and select ASL interpretation. We want to thank our interpreters, Taylin and Nina, for their help today. All right, so as always, we really want you to ask your questions. You have access to the Q&A feature, which is also located in that same Zoom toolbar below. That way you can ask our speakers questions throughout the webinar. We will do our best to answer all questions either by responding through that Q&A feature or aloud during the allotted Q&A segments. This webinar is also being recorded and will be publicly available on the Arts Action Fund website soon, along with any resources we discuss today. In the event that we don't answer all of your questions, please reach out to me, Morgan Fernari at mfernari@artsusa.org, so we can keep in touch. So now we're going to talk about today's session, which will include 3 different sections from our wonderful guest and staff speakers. First, we'll hear from Jana and Michael from Lillette Advisors on the impacts of redistricting. At the beginning of end of their presentation, Nina Azutunjli from the Arts Action Fund will come back to ask Jana and Michael some questions. Then we'll move to a conversation with Gwen Stembridge from Nonprofit Vote, led by Nina Azutunjli. After that, we'll hear from Americans for the Arts CEO Erin Harkey as she reveals a refreshed ArtsVote campaign branding and welcomes artist and designer Bob Faust to talk more about his design process with ArtsVote. I will then return with a few announcements and next steps for us. So these are our staff speakers, Erin, Nina, and myself. And here are our expert guest speakers today, Jana, Michael, Gwen, and Bob. Thank you all so much for being with us today, and I'm now going to go ahead and kick it over to Nina, Jana, and Michael.
Hello, everybody. My video is about to come on. There we go. Hello, everybody. I'm Nina Azutunjli. I am the Executive Director of the Americans for the Arts Action Fund, as well as the Chief Counsel of Government and Public Affairs for Americans for the Arts. I am a Middle Eastern woman wearing a black shirt and new turquoise earrings from the wonderful AFTA conference that we had in Albuquerque that I was able to get there. That was sensational. I am currently in Los Angeles visiting my daughter, and I'll be back in Washington, D.C. next week. Okay, I'm going to start things off by introducing our advisors from Lillette, who provide strategic guidance to both Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund, especially on political activities happening in the country today. And one of the areas that we're going to focus on is the impact of what's happening with redistricting in various states across the country. I'm going to kick it off with sending it to Jana Platt, who will be starting the conversation.
Thank you so much, Nina. I love your earrings. And I think we have some slides as well. And for folks, my name is Jana Platt. I'm a senior vice president at Lillette. I am a female with brown curly hair. It's emotionally frizzy to me right now, but I'm sitting in an office with a glass wall behind me. And let's give kind of a snapshot of where we are right now. we are 4.5 months to the 2026 midterm elections. I think the last time we threw out some acronyms, and we'll do our best this time. I know there's an alphabet city, but we know here in DC we are in alphabet soup. So if there's anything we need to cover or expand on, please drop in the chat. Morgan, we can go to the next slide. So here we are today. This is our current makeup of, the House and the Senate. The Senate hasn't adjourned today. They are gone until July 13th. I know Speaker Johnson was meeting with President Trump today at 2 p.m., holding the House to see if there's anything that can become unstick on the House floor. So I've been in meetings, so I don't know if anything has happened at the moment. But I just want to say as we look toward the midterm, just kind of how close and meaningful these elections are. I think even if the majority flips, we may see similar margins, but especially, at least, we've got a few seats on that House side, but really on the Senate side, we've got that 60 vote filibuster threshold, which is kind of still an issue when it comes to moving some legislation. But right now, as we close out June, we're halfway home to the election. I think we're standing right at the fold. We're at the middle. Midterm started on March 3rd in Arkansas, North Carolina, and Texas, and it'll end September 15th in Delaware. So we're 32 down. I think we have 19 to go, not including some of our runoffs. And before I hand it over to Michael Halley, I just wanted to say, in the next few weeks, we're going to see a disclosure deadline from the Federal Election Commission, what we call the FEC, and that's the July quarterly report, and that will cover fundraising and the finance and fundraising activity from April 1st to June 30th. So that's just one thing for folks to look at in the next few weeks. We'll see updates from campaigns. We'll see notes from different candidates, but kind of where we are, that's a good snapshot as I hand it over to Michael Halley to cover the next slide to kind of speak to a little bit of where we're going from here.
Yep. And wanted to show this to give some context before we get into the redistricting piece, because redistricting has been a hot topic this year, and I think will continue to be over the next few years, in part because of an effort led by the current administration to encourage states to undertake mid-cycle redistricting, which it was excessively rare until now, and that was coupled with the Voting Rights Act decision by the Supreme Court that removed or overturned a section of that Voting Rights Act that mandated districts be drawn to be inclusive of minority populations, and that will be especially affecting southern states. The reason for all of this, and the reason that is coming up now, I think is largely reflected in this chart. Presidents end up, most presidents in their first midterm election lose a substantial amount of seats in the subsequent midterm. If you look at the Obama and Trump numbers in 2010 and 2018, I think those are reflective. And I think the current administration was looking at these same numbers, and they're wondering, how do we address this, which really kicked off the redistricting madness that is pretty novel and unique to this time, but I think is reflective of where our national politics are right now. You want to click to the next slide. So as an update, and there have been some changes since the last time, I think I'd point to a couple bright spots of legislatures who, at least for the time being, decided not to take this unprecedented step of redistricting mid-cycle. That's South Carolina and Georgia. Georgia's not even on this list. You mentioned that, I think, in the last update. So both of those, I think, will likely take this on next year. But as it pertains to the 2026 election cycle, neither of them will undergo redistricting based on the VRA, Voting Rights Act. If I say VRA, that's the acronym for Voting Rights Act decision. Those will not change. These other states all have changes, as you can see. Just as a quick run through, and then we can dig in on any specifics and questions if we want to. Texas was really the leading effort here. Um, Governor Abbott was the first to really aggressively pursue mid-cycle redistricting, and that kind of gerrymander that came from that will likely, lower the Dem baseline by 4 to 5 seats. Republicans pick up 4 to 5 seats. California was a response to the redistricting effort they saw in Texas, and they were also starting to see in some of these other states, and passed a referendum through the state. Voters voted on this. They agreed to go through the redistricting largely as a response to Texas and some of these other states. And so that essentially, continued their case to the bottom, but washed out the changes that occurred in Texas, where Democrats likely to, increase their baseline by 4 to 5 seats. So back to an even baseline. Missouri, there is currently still legislation, or sorry, not legislation, but litigation, and I believe a referendum to try to eliminate the gerrymander there. But there is likely one less, the Kansas City seat, which was held by Emanuel Cleaver for many years. That district is being eliminated as it stood before. The minority population there, largely Black, is now dispersed between multiple districts, and Democrats therefore are likely to lose a seat in Missouri, with only the only remaining majority Black district in Missouri would be in the St. Louis market. North Carolina similarly saw an effort. It was tied to the leader in the state, either state senate or state house, I can't remember, Mike Watley, who's now running for the U.S. Senate, had a deal with the president that he would do redistricting if the president would endorse him in his primary. The president did, and he took on the redistricting effort in the North Carolina House. North Carolina does have a Democratic governor, but the legislature several years ago, when Roy Cooper was coming in, passed a law in the lame duck session eliminating the governor's ability to veto certain types of laws. This was one of them, so there was no ability to veto. Don Davis is now in the fight of his life in North Carolina first, and I think over time, likely the cycle, North Carolina will be down a seat. Utah attempted this, and the courts upheld their previously approved legislation there, which created a Dem seat. So Dems picked one up in Utah. Ben McAdams, that primary was held last Tuesday. Ben McAdams was successful in that primary. He'll be the next member from the first district in Utah. Ohio underwent redistricting, far more difficult. Marcy Kaptur's in probably the most complicated race of her life. Greg Landsman's seat got more complicated, and that likely will, both of those races, if they go to Republicans, would be a 2-seat shift, but both are competitive enough that that's where we have this in the range of 0 to 2. Virginia, similar to California, passed by 3 million people went to the polls and voted to approve a redistricting effort there that was going to be a response to the Republican effort. That legislature is controlled by Democrats. There's a Democratic governor. The court, after these votes were cast, the Supreme Court of Virginia determined that the referendum was afoul of the process, and in an unprecedented way overturned those 3 million votes and said it never should have happened. And so the 3 to 4 seats that would have been gained in Virginia for Democrats wiped out. No changes there. Florida, the governor there, Governor DeSantis, really timed his redistricting effort right around the VRA, Voting Rights Act court decision. they created maps that were based on the notion that the VRA would be overturned the way it was. And so those maps came out right before the VRA decision, and now will be upheld because of the VRA decision. That is likely to change the baseline, with Republicans gaining 2 to 4 seats there. Tennessee post VRA decision, as soon as the VRA was overturned by the Supreme Court, Tennessee immediately moved to redistrict. Dems will lose 1 seat there. I believe it's Tennessee 9, Steve Cohen's seat. Um, Alabama, Alabama's still somewhat up in the air on what the actual outcome will be there, but there is possible to drop one there with Terry Sewell's district. Louisiana, one of the 2 majority Black districts there, was changed. And now Troy Carter is in a primary for the first time because his district was also affected. But Louisiana will only now have 1 majority Black district after their redistricting effort. Louisiana was the basis of the VRA being overturned, or that section of the VRA being overturned. And then, as I mentioned at the top, South Carolina determined they would hold until likely next year to undergo their redistricting effort. We'll see more of this next year. I think as I mentioned on the last call, this will be, and Jenna, if you have other color to add here, you should, but likely a race to the bottom. Democrats will have to determine whether they are going to respond in kind to this Republican effort, but I think we're likely to see 3, 4, maybe even 6 additional states controlled by Republicans start to redistrict based on the VRA changes.
Thank you, Michael. That detail was really great. If you look at the slides where you had like the bar graphs of midterm elections during various different presidents, a lot of that change did not happen because of redistricting, but because of public opinion of being dissatisfied with the administration or their congressional members. So where you're showing, and it's articulated by the state itself of what they think is going to happen, where they think they're going to gain, say, Republican seats or perhaps even Democratic seats. That's really based on I think the number of registered Republicans or Democrats and how they've shifted geographically what's encompassed in a congressional district, where they think, oh, because now more pre-registered Republicans are in that district, that they think it's a win for the Republican. Is that correct? Right.
That is if the typical trends held. Even the projection we showed on the first slide. I mean, I think this is why Democrats are still widely expected to regain control of the House. Is the national generic ballot has Democrats favored by 6 points
Right.
in 2024. As Jana showed, the narrow margin we have today, it was roughly even. So there's a 6-point overall Democratic advantage nationally, which likely is a 18 to 20 seat gain. But these impacts from redistricting may make that margin smaller for Democrats. But yes, when we are giving those estimates on likely losses, that's based on past voting habits.
Exactly. And so the public opinion and that 6-point advantage that you're talking about, that could mean that, like, people who have voted, say, Republican in the past could vote a Democrat just for change purposes, which is typically what happens in these midterms. So there's hope, is I guess what I want to relay, is that there is hope with voter turnout, that we don't necessarily see what they estimate as the changes in the redistricting, and certainly changes that could happen with seats that were not redistricted, but people want change, and so they'll vote a certain way. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, I would say from a totally nonpartisan perspective,
Right.
I think that if people were to change habits, or there was a drastic change in who turns out, typically midterms have 10 to 15 percentage point drop off. There are far fewer non-college educated voters fewer that participate in midterm versus presidential campaigns or presidential elections. And there's a lower percentage of minority, especially Black and Hispanic voters that participate in midterm elections. So it's whiter and more educated typically. But if that shift happens and there was a significant change in who turns out, that would certainly alter outcomes.
Right. Jenna, do you want anything to add
I
before we
mean,
close out?
I would just add like that. Webinars like this, everyone who's on this call, attendees, the toolkit that will come out that you'll learn more about from Bob and Aaron. It's so important for folks to be out there, figure out how they're going to vote. You know, some folks on this call have already had their primary, many may have not. So, you know, I think for folks on this call, you know, figuring out where your community is, where your network is, and helping other folks show up, I think is going to be really important for folks to you know, really make their voice heard on this upcoming midterm and participate. So really, really thankful for this webinar and also thankful to this group for helping you know, plan your vote and helping to get other folks out this upcoming election. 130 days.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to the Lillette advisors for not only advising our organizations, but all of our member organizations that are listening today and who will be watching this later, which will be available to our entire membership. Thank you, Gwen, for coming on. I want to now invite Gwen to participate in this conversation about, okay, so we know how the cards are being laid out. We see daily news happening, and later I can comment on the latest court decision that happened today on mail-in ballots. That we need to learn how to make a plan, and not only make a plan for ourselves, but help others make their plan to vote effectively, know what the latest state election laws are, and where to find that information. And with that, I invite Gwen to come in and talk first about what is Nonprofit Vote, which is the name of their organization, and why especially it's helpful to 501c3 organizations who know that there are some restrictions in election laws, but there are also many things that you can do. And Gwen's going to talk about that. Gwen.
Thank you so much, Nina. I will share my screen here. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm so glad to talk with you all, especially talk with artists who are doing this work. It is so crucial. There is a place for everyone in this work, and so I'm so glad that that you all are getting involved. I'll start out by just sharing that who Nonprofit Vote is. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. So I've been doing this work for 20 years of resourcing the nonprofit sector to engage the communities that they're already serving in voting and in our democracy. And with that, we know that a lot of times folks that are served by nonprofits are less likely to be included in the process and can sometimes be left out of certain systems. And so in order to have a truly inclusive democracy, where we are hearing from all of the voices, we need to make sure that anyone who is within the nonprofit sector is engaging everyone that they interact with in our democracy and voting. So we support nonprofits in a couple different ways. One, we have a free resource library on our website, nonprofitvote.org. You can go there. There are timelines and templates and toolkits and all kinds of resources available to you for free. Please use them, whether you are doing a voter registration drive or organizing a candidate forum or getting creative and doing some other projects. We've got some tools to kind of help guide you through that. We also have a free national webinar series. I was so pleased to have Morgan as a guest on our webinar yesterday. And so we have those monthly. So please do sign up for those and join us. The next one will be about what nonprofits can do to support safe and fair elections. So that'll be in July. The other thing that we do is just collect stories, collect research-based partner case studies. We want to be sure that nonprofits have examples of what voter engagement can look like. Because as we've seen so far, it is sometimes tricky to walk that line and to figure out how to, stay nonpartisan within all of that. So we've got lots of resources there and examples. We also have a blog that is explaining things like the USPS mail-in ballot issues. We will be updating that one as the decision came out today. So please just stay tuned on things like that. And then we also do offer customized trainings. If you want to bring us out to your organization, we're happy to do that as well. And then we're the managing partner for National Voter Registration Day, which is September 15th this year. It is not too late to become a community partner. So I also encourage you to do that. I know that's a lot, but Nina, that's a little bit of where Nonprofit Vote is.
Thank you. So let's talk about some voter engagement activities that are safe for 501c3 nonprofits to do during an election year.
Absolutely. I'll start here by just saying there are some things that you cannot do, and we're starting out there. And I will also just preface this and say that I am not an attorney, and none of this should be interpreted as legal advice, but this is for educational purposes. But in general, 501c3 organizations cannot endorse or impose or oppose a candidate or a political party. You just need to stay nonpartisan in that way. That includes donating money or resources, so like use of space, or use of resources in kind, things like that. You cannot conduct any partisan election related activity. So if they, want you to, as a 501c3, if they want you to come to an event, you need to be willing to go to either or host either any of the parties at your organization, things like that. You're also not able to give out prizes or incentives to register to vote. You may see things like pizza, for registering or things like that. The caveat there is that you just need to be able to offer that pizza to anyone who stops by, not just in exchange for registering to vote. So little tidbits and tips there.
When can I ask a question on that point?
Absolutely.
So many arts organizations kind of make it a fun day at the polling booths to come and turn out and vote, having musicians perform, doing any kind of visual arts activities to kind of promote the value of voting. Can they do those kinds of things?
Absolutely. It is so crucial that we make sure that voting is engaging and that conversations about voting are engaging. It's really easy to get overwhelmed in just all of the noise that happens around elections. I know I get, a billion text messages, it feels like, from various campaigns and organizations and things like that. Just it's easy to get kind of overloaded with information. But I think artists have the unique ability to cut through the noise and find things that are really engaging and human, and connect with people about real issues that are impacting their lives. So, who is making decisions about the potholes that I've run into or the cracks in the sidewalk as I'm walking down the street? That might be my city council member. I actually do care about that. I might not be, interested in the larger narrative, but those are things that I care about, and voting can impact those everyday issues, like healthcare, like childcare, like access to employment opportunities, affordable housing, all of those just basic needs that everyone has. So yeah, we've got to make those connections between those things and make sure that it's engaging, and artists can do that. I've got some examples. I don't want to leave you with just the things that organizations cannot do. I want to leave you with lots of things that organizations can do. So I've got a list here of some smaller capacity, some medium capacity, and some larger capacity, just examples of things. I find when I talk to organizations, sometimes they're just overwhelmed with where to even begin and what to do. And so I will tell you that you're not alone in that for sure. There are lots of organizations that are trying to figure out what this looks like. And there are lots of options for things that you can do that are really simple. There is no shame in starting small, even if you have a staff of 20 people and you send out an email to them and make sure that they have updated their voter registration. That is taking a step in the right direction and is a completely nonpartisan thing to do, right? That you can do as a 501c3. So some of these small capacity activity examples are that you can add some of those key election dates and deadlines to your organizational calendar. We all know that November 3rd is the day this year, but there are also, depending on your state, there are primaries, there are runoffs, there are special elections that are happening between now and November. And so you might want to add those to your organizational calendar as well. You don't want to plan your organization's biggest fundraiser on the evening of November 3rd, right? You might want to choose a different date for that, right? Think about those things as you're making planning so that you can incorporate that into the work.
And Gwen, that I'm assuming that would include being able to show deadlines for registration to be able to vote, which I think you'll probably talk about in a little bit. It will also include the last day that you can do early voting, the last day to mail in your ballots if they're still allowed in your state. And is the ballot, does it have to be a postmark date or a receipt date? Things like that.
All of these are really important details that if you learn what those details are for your state, then you can make sure that you are communicating those and you can be a trusted resource. This is what nonprofits, this is our specialty, right? Is that we can be that trusted resource in communities that speak the language literally, but also figuratively of the community. And so you all as nonprofits, it's important for you to figure that stuff out. You can find your information. If you're not sure what those dates and deadlines are, you can go to vote.gov. It is a government website. It is nonpartisan. It's not, taking your information or anything like that. You can go there and get connected to your state Secretary of State's office. Which will then tell you those details. Your county board of elections also has resources. I just heard from a county board of elections earlier today who went to our webinar yesterday and said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're encouraging people to reach out to their county board of elections. We love when nonprofits and organizations reach out to us because they want to help get more people registered to vote or get more people turning out to vote. So please consider those local boards of elections a great resource. Which is the third point on this slide, which is just amplifying that information from your local board of elections. So those dates, those deadlines, you can many of them do have social media. And so you can, comment on that and like and repost and all of that. And I'm sure that they will love that. And that is a trusted, nonpartisan, this is going right to the source type of resource. So you don't have to worry about it showing, bias in any certain way. This is just the information. You can find out what's on your sample ballot. You can find out, where can I do early voting? Where are those locations? You can find your polling place. All of those details. Nonprofits can tell people how to vote, like the mechanics of how to vote. Can't tell them who to vote for, but there's a lot within that how to vote, how to show up, how to find the information that you need that you are able to do. You can also provide and promote sample ballots for your region. If you work particularly in a city or in a county or a neighborhood, then you can print out some of those sample ballots. If you have a lobby that people come through or an area, you can have those, right? Pass out voter registration information to parents after the summer program that you're working on, or things like that. So lots of options and ways that you can easy, quick things that you can do.
Gwen, let me interject and ask another kind of related question, provide some guidance on. You mentioned ballots and maybe ballot initiatives as well. So you were talking about a sample of actually what will you see when you go to vote? What does the ballot look like, so that they can kind of plan and think about what is there and know how to vote. But it did trigger for me ballot initiatives. So if there are any ballot initiatives that your nonprofit is for or against, perhaps a tax issue that will specifically hinder being able to fund the arts in your community, or a ballot initiative to have a bond that would increase funding for certain cultural facilities, things like that. While it is on the election ballot itself, being for or against it is not electioneering. It would not be something that nonprofits are prohibited from voicing an opinion on, because it is considered, and I do a layup for you, it's considered what?
It's nonpartisan. It is nonpartisan. It is absolutely a thing you can do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's actually called lobbying in that case.
Lobbying, right? Yes,
exactly.
yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So it does count against, like, if you're spending any money and time on doing that, you should measure it and record it, because it goes towards your ample budget of what the government allows for lobbying.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I don't remember if this is in the medium or the large section activities, but please pay attention to those ballot initiatives. Nonprofits can absolutely take part in those. It's something, we encourage you to talk with your board about it, and really find where that ballot initiative connects to your mission. But like you said, so much arts funding comes from decisions that are made, like these bond issues, like levies. All of that is all impacted by that. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yeah. Some of the medium kind of capacity activities are, you can partner with a nonpartisan voting organization. There are partner. If there are two themes to this, to my portion of this, it is stay nonpartisan and make sure that you're collaborating and partnering with other organizations. You don't have to do this work alone. So partner with some of those organizations. We're fans of the League of Women Voters. And I know there are lots of chapters in counties around the country. So you can always partner with one of them. There are other organizations, often the Urban League is doing voter engagement activities. You'll find all kinds of nonprofits that are great resources. You can hold mock elections to raise awareness about upcoming elections. I have seen some really fun examples of this. Let's vote on the best cookie, in order to just get used to that practice of voting, and making that more comfortable. You can also host local organizations to talk about topics that are related to the election. However, you can bring that conversation in and to the forefront, it can be really valuable. And once people start to connect the elections and voting, not just with people, but with issues and with topics and policies, that really, not only does it keep you in that nonpartisan lane, but it also connects to real issues in people's lives, right? If you're talking about affordable housing, I don't know any place in the country right now that is not concerned about affordable housing. So if if that is a topic that you want to bring in, someone to talk about, and then you add your art, incorporate that somehow into it, can be a really valuable partnership there. Other little ideas: bring bookmarks or business cards, print them out with key election dates and deadlines, something really simple. Again, you can have it in your lobby. You can, give things out if you are a theater and you want to give things out at intermission. Here's your popcorn and your glass of wine and your voter registration information, right? What a great concession that you could do. Also, organizations are able to provide rides to the polls as well. If you have a vehicle or you are transporting people on a regular basis, you can also provide rides to the polls as another kind of medium capacity activity. And then if you're an organization with larger capacity, you could do something like host a candidate forum. Again, partner, collaborate with different organizations. There may be an organization who wants to do this, but doesn't quite have, the audience or the reach, or they're just afraid it's going to be really boring and they need an artist to show up and, drum up some interest and get folks there. So those are absolutely things that nonprofits, 501c3s can do and stay nonpartisan with them. You can invite candidates to tour your organization, your project site, your event. Bring them to a gallery showing, bring them to a theater, invite them to come to your theater. You want to make sure that you're inviting them equally, right? And not showing preference to any of those, but you can absolutely do that. And then once you do that with every one of the candidates that's vying for whatever position, then whoever gets in office is then familiar with your organization and might come back to you also for you to be a resource and a subject matter expert. And you start to build that relationship that can be really good for your organization as well.
There's a line I use, make friends before they're elected, not after they're elected.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And because you never know, what relationships can produce over time, right? And not that it's just for that, but you build those relationships over time, and it's really great for organizations. We also just encourage you to incorporate civics education throughout the year, not just, a few months before the elections, but if you've got, some trivia on your newsletter that you're sending out anyway, put some trivia on there about, who is the mayor of our city, or, what's a policy, what's the difference between our congressional members and then our state legislature. Fun little trivia facts. I say fun, I might be a little nerdy about that, but you can make it engaging. And then you can also, yes, as we talked about, organize your community for or against a ballot measure. You can absolutely do that. So those are just some examples, and this is the floor of the possibilities. You can really take it from there. I've seen so many creative ways that especially artists have shown up for this. So really, really exciting there. And the other thing I just want to share with you, this is one of our tools that we have, which is, and I'll put the link to this in the chat, but if you're ready, if you're excited, if you're inspired, you're ready to just take this to the next level, then we've got your ABCDs here. And the first thing to do is assess capacity. Figure out, what your organization is able to do. What audience do you have? Make sure that you're getting buy-in from leadership and all of that. Then you want to build your basic knowledge. You want to gather resources. You want to understand what those state laws are, what those deadlines are, and all of that. You want to create a plan. Start simple. Set goals. Don't overwhelm yourself, especially if you're doing this for the first time. There's no shame in starting small. Like I said, if you get your staff and volunteers, make sure that they have a plan to vote, then that is a great place to start. And then really look at matching those activities with your organizational calendar. And I'll just share here this is what this plan looks like. It's in a Google Doc form, so you can actually go through and fill this out. I'm going to scroll past this really quickly, but I will put this link in the chat. Just list some of those community benefits, some of those organizational benefits. choosing a staff lead, learning that information about your local elections office. Step B, right? Building relevant knowledge. You're putting those dates in the calendar to understand what, when these things are happening so that you can start to plan that alongside your organizational calendar. Which is a great thing. You can put resources for your state and county elections office so that you have those links handy. Create that plan. We just ask some questions throughout here that will help prompt you. How big is your email list? How do you currently share information? And all of that. And then and there's lots of links within this as well, but then dates and schedules. And we've got here an example plan for incorporating this in. I'm a big fan of kind of counting backwards. So there's post-election here. What do you want to do post-election? But really on election day, what are the things that you're going to do? Here's some examples. 1 week out from election, here are some examples, right? 2 weeks. And we've got kind of some of those registration deadlines, and then you can kind of count back from there. And then this is a blank one for you to then fill out and kind of figure out where that's going to fit within your organization. So this is the tool that we created. Folks have found it helpful. Also, if you would like, if you have feedback about it, if you have ideas, we also welcome that. I'll put my email in the chat, and we welcome feedback on that as well. And just let us know if you're using it, if it's helpful. But making that plan is really crucial. Let me pause there. And so we've got it in a couple different formats. There is a Google Doc link, there is a Word doc, and a PDF, so that it's in different formats that are helpful to you. The last thing that I'll say before we go, I think, to some Q&A is our call to action at this time is, some of you may be familiar with the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, is considering a rule that would impact any organizations that receive federal funding and that also do voter engagement. There is the rule is 400 something pages long. So I don't know anyone who has read the entire thing, but there are some attorneys way smarter than me that have reviewed it. And there are some concerns that they have flagged. Some of those are around some anti-DEI concerns, but then also in particular, there are some regulations around voter registration that we don't think would necessarily legally be harmful, but we're really worried about the language of it and it discouraging people from doing voter engagement. So that's what's really crucial here.
Can
so
I
submit a
add
comment
something there?
Yeah, July 13th is the deadline. Yes.
Yes, July 13th. And we encourage people to make comment too. But I just want to make clear that what the rule's trying to do, it is intimidation, no doubt about it. It's intimidation. But what they're trying to do is say, if you receive federal funds, the federal funds that you receive, you cannot use on voter engagement, DEI activities, and things like that. It's clearly an act of intimidation because that's already the law. But maybe not on DEI though.
Yeah.
But so keep that in mind before you completely freak out. It is limited, but it is, because it's intimidation, I think everyone should comment on it.
Absolutely. So we've got links there. I will share in the chat as well. So yeah, that's what I've got for you.
Thank you. I am going to ask a couple more follow-up questions, but after we're done with our segment, if you could go into the Q&A section, some folks are asking for your email address, and perhaps checking on a link that they went on that was a broken link possibly, or maybe just a wrong URL. But you can do that after just a couple more questions. One of the big programs that you do is National Voter Registration Day. Can you talk about that, the date, and how people can get involved?
Absolutely. So National Voter Registration Day is September 15th this year. It's a Tuesday. And we bring together thousands of partners from across the country to host voter registration events. And so we have, college campuses, arts organizations, housing organizations, food banks, all kinds of organizations, businesses, companies that get together and register voters and make sure that folks are registered. It's not just about getting folks registered, it's also making sure that folks are checking their voter registration to be sure that they haven't been removed from the rolls. There have been some states that have been cleaning up their lists. And so you want to be sure that you haven't accidentally been removed from the rolls in that process if you are an eligible voter. So please do encourage folks not just to register, but to check your registration if you believe that you are registered. So that's really crucial. You can sign up as a partner. Again, I'm going to put a whole bunch of links in the chat for you all, but you can sign up to be a partner, nationalvoterregistrationday.org, and save the date, September 15th. You can become a community partner, get a bunch of free resources and swag and stickers and all kinds of things.
Great. Are these swag and stickers actual things that you physically mail to them, or are they virtual?
They're things we actually physically mail to you. So we will mail to you posters in at least 5 languages this year that we have. So we will mail you physical posters. They haven't gone to the printer yet. But I've seen the designs. It's very cool. There's also, we've got some other items. There are tote bags. There are all kinds of things that you can buy, but also you will get shipped for free, the stickers and the posters and other swag and resources.
And all you have to do is become a free partner?
Become a free partner. Yeah, become a free
and what is
community
the
partner.
eligibility to become a partner?
That you are willing to host a voter registration event. That's
Okay.
that's the big one. And that you're willing to do it in a nonpartisan way.
Yes, in a nonpartisan way. That's great. The September 15th date, is that based on your organization's research that like reviewing all the states and jurisdictions that it's safe if you still are trying to do voter registration by September 15th, that date hasn't passed in any state?
Correct. So the longest distance from voter registration deadline to election day is 30 days. So around, the beginning of October. So on September 15th, you've still got a good 2 weeks or so to make sure that you are getting folks registered.
So that's important to note too, that if you're thinking about doing something around September 15th, don't delay, don't get your materials ready because you have an active at least 2 weeks. Some states let you register to vote on the same day as voting day. That's why it's important to know. Can you talk a little bit more about not only vote.gov, but some other websites to help groups and individuals make a plan on knowing what the laws are in that state based on changes that are happening almost daily?
Yeah, there are lots of resources, which is great. And there are lots of changes that are happening. I'll give a plug for ours internally. First, we have a set of state guides that will be published in the next month or so, that have the state laws. So you can go find your state and understand how to run a voter registration drive in your state. That's what these guides are for. It's not just how to register to vote, but how to run a registration drive. There are some very specific laws. Texas is one of the hardest states to register voters in. You need to be deputized. You need to go through certain trainings. Other states, you can just be a person who, gets some voter registration materials from your Board of Elections and goes out and registers folks. It really does depend state by state, but we worked with the Fair Elections Center and their attorneys to ensure that that resource is up to date for each one of those states. So that's a really great resource. It'll be on both the nonprofit vote website and also National Voter Registration Day's website. So that one for sure. I think vote.gov taking you to the Secretary of State's office is a really direct way to get that information. There's all kinds of other resources. Vote 411 is a great resource. You can just put in your address, get the information you need there. I know that there's, vote.org and TurboVote and Rock the Vote, and there's lots of options. Use whatever works for you, and really just encourage folks to find something that's going to be a good fit for your community. Ballotpedia is another one that we've partnered with before. So lots of resources, and just make sure you find the one that is the best fit for you and for your organization, and get the information out there. That's what's most important.
Great. And I know a couple, well, at least one more that we are also looking to partner with, and that is whenweallvote.org. And they're all, some of them, once you connect with them, they will notify you when certain deadlines are coming up. So it sends you reminders and things like that. So what we recommend is look at all of them and consider what is the best fit for you. Do a test case, run your state through it as if you're a registered voter, to see if you're getting the information you need or if one is better than the other. Choose wisely for your state. But vote.gov is the one that will take you to all of your state government sites. And in the end, that is the official site. So keep all those things in mind when you're considering which one to promote. Morgan, did we get all the questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, we have one question, and then I have a question as well. We have a question here that says, can you clarify if there's funding if we do an event on voter registration day?
Gwen?
Great question. There is, it depends on depends on the organization. There is some for some community colleges. It just depends on the funding that we get from year to year, but you can reach out to info@nationalvoterregistrationday.org, and I can put that in the chat as well. But you can ask them specifically if your organization might be a good fit for that.
Perfect. Thank
And
you.
remember, this is educational activity. So there might be local foundations, community-based foundations, corporations, individual donors who would be willing to support this because it falls under educational activity of a charitable organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, and I know people are so excited for Gwen to put her information in the chat. She is going to do that right when she's done talking, we promise. We'll make sure that she does. I just made you co-host so you can chat to everybody as well, Gwen. But I actually had a question as well. We had, Janet and Michael come on initially talking about redistricting. We're talking about making our plan to vote. With that information, what can organizations do in districts and states that have had redistricting? How can they be more focused on what people need to do in order to make their plan? Like, what is there an extra step they might need to take?
Yeah, great question. I think checking in with your Secretary of State's office or with your local county Board of Elections office to just see, what has changed. They are likely making those updates. They are the official resource. And so finding out what has changed and understanding that as an organization so that then you can be a trusted resource for the community is the best way to do that. I think it is all about being that trusted resource. So you've got to make sure that you're getting your accurate information and you've got all that to be a resource to the community.
Perfect.
And I would add that in addition to checking for yourself, because it is wildly changing on a daily basis, and I do want a moment to talk about what happened in a court case today. But I would recommend if you're in one of those districts that have been redistricted and you're feeling like you may be disenfranchised from your voting rights, not only checking for yourself, but I'm going to recommend getting 10 people to get registered to vote, because in order to counter an attempt to disenfranchise voters, you need to turn out the vote more than just, it's not just a responsibility to vote for yourself. You have to get others to vote who have not voted before, who have been lackadaisical about voting, to make sure they're registered and that they vote on time. This is a civic duty at this point.
And that's for, individuals, but also as organizations, we're here to support our communities, right? So if you're a local organization, a state organization who is capable, like, Gwen talked about, reaching into your communities and finding those people who might not have had access to that information. That's a big part of, I feel like this year, especially how we can do more to continue to make sure that people are
Yeah.
getting out the vote, because there's such a gap sometimes in even getting access to that information. How can you be a part of your community in that way? And that's the arts and culture, right? We're everywhere. We're all the way
Yeah.
through our communities. So,
Especially those just turning 18 who have never voted before, who may
yes.
not know how to vote. That's really important too. But let me just add about this court decision. So, as many of you might remember, President Trump had done an executive order to really restrict the amount of mail-in balloting. Now, a president is typically not allowed to get involved with election laws because that is a state issue and a congressional issue. But he did this executive order, essentially ordering the post office to um, control whose ballots are being mailed in based on a list that was created by Homeland Security of who's eligible to vote. This is like incorrect data of how they can get that kind of information. So a court, a district court in Massachusetts, a federal district court in Massachusetts, has ruled that the president does not have authority in an executive order to do mail-in balloting. But just so you know, the post office had already was momentarily proposing their rules on how they were going to limit mail-in balloting. This is really getting closer and closer to a very bad issue, because I'm sure it's going to be appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. Whether they will weigh in before the general election, stay tuned. Um, and um, State laws had already begun restricting how mail-in balloting will work. So if you are someone who got used to mail-in balloting during COVID and since, keep on track with what your state is requiring and not allowing for mail-in ballots this year.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. And I know, Nina, you're going to kick it off to our next.
Oh, great. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the CEO of both Americans for the Arts and its Arts Action Fund, Erin Harkey, to kick off information about ArtsVote this year.
Thanks, Nina. As Nina mentioned, I'm Erin Harkey. I'm the CEO of Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund. I'm a Black woman. My hair is pulled back in a bun. I have on some gold jewelry and a button-down striped shirt. Um, Really, just a lot of gratitude and thanks to our speakers, to Gwen and to Michael and Jana from Lillette. That information was incredibly informative, and I'm already, sort of thinking creatively about how to utilize that information and get people to the polls. At Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund, we believe that the arts are not separate from public life. They are central to it. And we are in a unique position to help define where we are as communities, what we value, and how we imagine our future together, which is why we're going to play such an important role coming into these midterm elections. And today, I'm also incredibly excited to share an update about ArtsVote, and you all are among the first to see it and hear it. ArtsVote isn't new, but this moment calls for something bigger, bolder, and more visible. And ArtsVote is becoming an always-on national organizing and advocacy platform and an organization-wide priority for both Americans for the Arts and the Action Fund. And as always, this work is going to continue to be powered by our communities and by our artists. So some of you may recognize this. Previously, Shepard Fairey helped shape the visual language of ArtsVote. And now we are thrilled to partner with Chicago-based artist and creative director Bob Faust, alongside his creative collaborator and life partner, the internationally renowned artist Nick Cave. Bob, who is going to be here with us today in just a few moments, has reimagined the visual identity for ArtsVote with bold graphics designed to empower advocates, amplify civic participation, and elevate creative voices across the country. And today we're excited to share with you all of the new sort of ArtsVote logos and visual identity. In addition to the sort of bold graphic logo that you see here, he has also created a flexible family of logos for organizers, partners, and communities to use in different ways. And because art belongs to all of us, we've even created templates so citizen artists everywhere can create their own versions. We've also got some merch coming soon, which is also fun. And we're going to be sending out a marketing toolkit to all of you, our sort of member and partner organizations. We're also going to be running a national campaign in districts and states around the country, led by Yossi Sargent and the team at Task Force. And there are going to be lots more informative ArtsVote webinars coming through up until November. So ArtsVote is just not a campaign, it's an invitation to organize, to connect across sectors, to make sure that the arts are visible and valued and supported in every community, because our creative future will be shaped by the people who show up for it. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Bob Faust. Hi.
Hi.
And I'm going to ask him a few questions. We're going to have a little kiki, if that's cool.
Sounds good by me.
Yeah. So I know Bob well and have had the great pleasure of working with him on many civic projects over the years. And so I was incredibly excited and honored when he agreed to be our partner in creating a new vision for ArtsVote. So I'm going to start with just sort of like what your inspiration for that was, and also like if you could just a little bit in your sort of response, tell the folks a little bit about who you are and what like motivates you as an artist. But in your artist statement, it says, your intent is to incite a physical and emotional reaction with every project to manifest new memories. So how does that show up in the ArtsVote creative, and what do you want people to feel when they see it for the first time?
Yeah, well, thanks, Erin. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm even more thrilled to be part of a project that has the ability and the engine behind it that could actually make some real change. So that's super exciting. That's at the center of my work, period. Is like if I could do work that can have a real effect, I'm in it 100%. So here we are, ArtsVote brand, right? And I believe in general that the simpler something is, especially when it has to communicate across so many different kinds of humans, the simpler that it is, the more effective it's going to be. And so what we started with was a logo that says and shows exactly what it is. So that's why it is a typographic mark. The letter forms create a check mark. It's that simple. It could be teeny, it could be giant. It could be reinterpreted by anyone on this Zoom call or their family around a kitchen table or whatever it might be, and still be the same thing. ArtsVote. If you're into arts and culture and understand that that's your issue, I want to show through this mark that all it takes is voting and communicating to others that your vote can impact the arts. So I guess that's at the essence of it.
Well, maybe you can dive just a little bit deeper into that about what made you want to partner with AFTA and the Action Fund specifically around this Arts Vote campaign. And why do you think that arts advocacy, matters? I think matters to, you personally right now, and I think ma matters to Americans in general.
Yeah, so as you introduced me, I work very closely with my partner. He's also part of this project. Make no mistake, because I'm the only face here, that doesn't mean he hasn't had a great say all along the way. And you saw in that first image, his artwork is actually our first artistic interpretation.
I have
But
a question for that too.
okay. But at the bottom, the reason we wanted to do this, besides you being at the helm, Aaron, is that by partnering with you all, we get the fuel of everything that AFT is doing and ArtsVote and your community as a multiplier for our own. So, like, that's just a symbol of what we all have to do. You know, we're all working together to give you some assets that are going to help all of us make a big change. And so, like, let's like walk the walk and talk the talk exactly like we need to. Um, and I guess the other part of your question was a little bit about why
Arts
this is
advocacy.
important to us.
Yeah.
Well, you know, all of us in the arts sector know the power of the arts. We all know it, but the world doesn't. And I'd really like our power to be seen as an engine for all of us, not just for the creative sector, but for all of us. And to really communicate that it's not a luxury for the few, but it's an engine for all.
I love that. We're a great connector.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, what was the other thing that as I was listening to the webinar, I actually wrote down something that, hang on, I need glasses to see my notes. Something said someone said something about how we really need to be using our voice, but like we have this great benefit of our voice being so many different things. It's not just what's coming out of our mouth. It's, you know, the emotions seeping out of our pores as well as what we're visually putting into the world. And that's such an easier way to get people to understand a difference or a challenge or a change of mind than to tell them this is how you should be thinking. So that's what I mean by the power of the arts is for everybody. Like it really is a influencer and in so many different ways.
yeah, and I was like, just to sort of, plus one to what you're saying, when I was thinking of, where they were going through, all of the, different ways that people can, be engaged as nonprofit organizations, like, as creative people, we're like immediately thinking, how do we, take this instruction, but, take it to the sort of next level, right? Because we are so adept at communication and we have so many tools, right? I think at our disposal to, communicate to people in lots of different ways, right? And to sort of meet people where they are and sort of bring them in. And I think that's like, sort of a real strong asset in this moment.
Totally agree with you.
So let's talk about Siren.
Siren, yeah.
So Nick's sculpture Siren, which has sort of the interlocking bronze arms and vintage gramophones, and learned a new word. And it debuted at the Venice Biennale. And it feels like it is in deep conversation with ArtsVote's themes and sort of this like idea of collective voice and civic power and action, and also like stronger together too.
Totally.
So, Nick has spoken about how this sculpture is a symbol of people collectively locking arms, standing together, but also the fragility that of that cohesion when it crumbles.
Yeah.
Um, and do you see a through line between that work and what you drew you both, I think, to this campaign?
Yeah. I mean, you know, creative ideas can happen within an individual. They usually start with an individual, but real change requires the collective power of many. That's what we're seeing in those linked arms, the power of many. That's what we're doing by working with you and AFTA and ArtsVote. Um, I also think that when you're looking at Nick's work, whether you know it or not, it's always working on two levels. And it generally starts as a very highly positive approach. And in this case, to community voice. But you can also see the imperative or the gravity of the situation because of the weight of the bronze arms or the support. Linked arms is so many different things. It's so many different things. And I think it only takes a second. And that's what's good about art, right? We give it more than a second. We give it more than the headline on the page, to see the gravity with which we're working for or toward, or against, I should say. But you know what I mean. And it's about reminding us of the urgency of the moment, that there's possibility within that urgency, that as President Obama said this last weekend, that all those values are all still here. None of that has been taken away from us. We just need to bring it up to the surface and share it and see each other. And I think that's what that work is all about.
You mentioned, I think both your collective practice with Nick, but also sort of, independent practice has these incredible, through lines of, being very community focused and centered. And, I'm glad you brought up the Obama Center because you guys did such a beautiful job this past weekend with the sound suits. And I'd seen that performance in different iterations, but it always is such a powerful expression of the community that it is. It becomes new again every time when there's sort of different actors and different players participating in such a beautiful way. And I know that that sort of spirit of community was also why you guys created Facility, and just drives so much about your practice. So I'm just wondering if how you see those connections to ArtsVote, and I think making a long-term impact, but just like collectively, I think what does this mean in this moment for artists and access for our communities and for the field?
Um, I think that goes back to, again, like, reiterating that ArtsVote is this opportunity for us to really show, to deliver an impact that's measurable, that then can be used on and on and on and on. We all, I think most of our cities, I know Chicago, but we've been pretty good at creating these arts impact reports, and they're there. But I think people need to feel those impacts and know where they come from. And so I think ArtsVote is a visualization, like even that logo, that brand, that maybe next year we'll be able to take the collective iterations of ArtVote. We're starting right now with this very straightforward one that I did that I think is really important to start there. But like, what will it look like when we have a room covered in hundreds of different ones? It's going to be a visual representation of how we are all unique individuals working toward a singular goal.
It was super cool. So the first time, this audience here is getting a peek at it, but we unveiled the first brand at our conference in Albuquerque. And it was so awesome to see it in life, right? At the sort of Arts Boat Bazaar. And it was, we had tattoo versions of it, and people were able to wear it and put it on their nails, and we had badges for tote bags, and like just to see it activated in real life, and even a mirror that said I'm an arts voter.
Yeah, that's one of my most exciting. I love that idea that you take a picture of yourself in the
Yeah,
mirror. I love
it's
it.
cool. Ping pong
Yeah,
paddle. It was just like it
yeah.
was super cool. um and so I'm super excited. you know Not only I think that the seriousness of voting, because this is a very important civic action that we all need to sort of commit to, but also just the joy, right, that we can bring to community and a sense of shared purpose, right? And the thing that we provide as sort of artists, and I think the sort of playfulness that you've inserted into this as well, right? The sort of invitation to folks to participate, I think is really beautiful. So I just wanted to, applaud you for that and thank you for being on this journey with us.
I'm thrilled to. We're both very honored to be part of it. So keep asking the questions. We'll keep doing
Okay.
it.
Well, I will hope to see you in person soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erin, and thank you so much, Bob. I'm gonna just come on one more time. I had some people requesting that they get to see the branding one more time. So I'm gonna do that before we wrap up, just so people can see it. We're gonna be able to post it very, very soon. But this is the artwork Siren by Nick Cave that they were discussing with, of course, the hands and the megaphones. And it's absolutely incredible. It's the perfect imagery to take us into this new era of ArtsVote and to continue to uplift everything that we're doing. And then also, just so people can take a look, the ArtsVote logo is here. We have that beautiful check mark that connects the two words. And we're going to continue to be using that and using the brand throughout. Like Erin said, we're going to have an amazing ArtsVote toolkit that we'll be able to share with everybody coming really, really soon. So look out for an email from us around that and how to use it. It's going to be really incredible. We can't wait for all of you to work with us as we continue to build this up. I'm just going to finish out with a couple of slides. So on the page now is our ArtsVote webpage. So right now it's located on the Arts Action Fund site, and we're going to have a brand site as well coming soon. But all of the programmatic updates around ArtsVote will be on this site. So continue to register for our webinars that will come up here. You'll be able to see different Get Out the Vote resources, including the ones Gwen has shared today. Those are going to go up very soon. The recording for this webinar will also be on this page. Also, the federal candidate survey, that's something I'm going to show you in just a moment. That is also located on this page, along with any of the answers we've received from candidates. So if you guys are looking to do a federal candidate survey on your own, please take a look at ours. It is 501c3 compliant. And so if you have any questions on that, just let us know. It also has remaining key primary dates as well as any contact information for questions for us. Here's that federal candidate survey I was talking about. We have both an online version and a PDF version. So if you want to print ones out and be able to physically go ahead and hand those into people, or they can just do it online. So if you want to make a QR code and allow people to scan it, you can bring that to town halls, use those questions to ask at your town halls. The reason that we're talking about it being 501c3 compliant, Americans for the Arts has joined us in being able to share out that federal candidate survey. We've created and curated those questions to make sure that it remains as nonpartisan as we possibly can. We've had legal representation review it as well, and they have approved it. We have people already filling them out and sending them to their own representatives and senators. And you can even take these questions and use them at the local level. Just switch out that word federal for state or for state or local groups as well. So that's the direct link here. We also always want you to take action. There's so much happening right now, both on the federal level, on the voting level, on our local levels. So you can always take action at our Arts Action Center. We have a bunch of really amazing emails, curated emails that you can send for NEA, NEH, and more. National Endowment for the Arts and National Endowment for the Humanities. Sorry, alphabet soup. Okay, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here and continuing to do this work alongside us. I think it's really scary sometimes when we're nonprofits out here and we're just making sure that we can stay compliant, but also help our communities because that's what we're here to do. So we hope that you continue to feel more and more comfortable as this series progresses with making sure that you're doing this really, really vital and important work that affects all of us. And lastly, join or renew your membership with the Arts Action Action Fund. The Arts Action Fund membership is completely free. So go ahead and sign up, and then you'll receive all of our invitations to these webinars, breaking news updates, federal breakdowns, and you'll get to see when the ArtsVote Toolkit comes out as well. So go ahead and do that. Once again, thank you all for being here. The recording will be up early next week, and it'll also be sent out via email. If you're looking for past recordings, the caveat there is that we were sharing some specific advice that our partners didn't want us to share publicly. So if you were a registrant for that webinar, you should have received the recording. And if you're still looking for it and you need those resources, please reach out to me, and we'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well. Thank you all so much and have a great day.